We have Julio and Andrew are going to be guiding us through the changes that iOS are meaning to marketers. So let's give them a really nice afternoon welcome, Julio and Andrew.
All right, welcome everybody, and thanks again for being here. I'm Andrew LeClaire, and I lead product marketing here at Movable Ink. And in case you weren't in his earlier session, I'm joined by...
Hi everyone, I'm Julio Lopez, and I'm Movable Ink's Strategy Vice President overseeing the retail vertical. So in this session, we are going to focus on three things. Our first goal is to set the stage and talk about the current and honestly ever-changing dynamics of email as it relates to Apple and Gmail. We also want to help you ideate ways in which you can respond to these changes and hopefully inspire you with some examples that you can use to bring meaningful performance results.
And so I'll start us off today by saying this. So as marketers this last year, we have seen a ton of changes, right? So starting with iOS 18.2, which we'll get into more detail on in just a minute, all the way through Google's announcements of managed subscriptions and priority sorting just last month. And while all of these things represent, right, and continue to represent some pretty significant changes, as marketers, we have a ton of experience dealing with this, right? Like, this is not the first time that our industry's undergone some pretty substantial shifts, and it's certainly not going to be the last.
So if we think about how we're going to deal with these changes, it really comes back to marketing 101. It's what we all learned that first day in school. Get the right content to the right customer at the right time. Those rules have not changed. But as the world that we operate in becomes a little bit or a lot more complex, we also have to make sure that we are doing this in the right channel and at the right frequency. And while saying that is really, really easy, it does continue to remain our North Star. And it's something that hopefully we'll be able to help you with here today.
And so to dive in then, we want to start with iOS 18.2, which hopefully everybody in the room is familiar with by now. But just to kind of level set on that, there's really four main changes that this brought about for us. So the first of which is Apple introducing tab labels and then automatically categorizing our emails into things like primary, transactions, updates, and promos. The second thing that this brought about was digest view, which is the two that you see in the center there. So what is happening now is that all messages from a sender are being grouped together. And then when a user clicks into any of that content, it's getting clipped by a pretty significant amount, with the vast majority of that being hidden under that See More link. And then the fourth one is that Apple is using its AI to replace our pre-headers. But since we have a ton of content to get through, we really want to focus on these two in the center here, so group by sender, and the resulting message clipping, because that's where we're getting the most questions from you guys. So here's how that works, right? So now when a customer receives a transactions update, a promo message, all of the other messages from that sender are going to appear as they scroll through. And then if you actually click into any of the content, again, the majority of that is now getting clipped. So the number one question that we've gotten in response to this is, OK, if Apple's going in and actually like clipping my content, how do I design better images to take advantage of that limited real estate that I do have? And the answer there is, it's a little nuanced, but it basically comes down to device type. So the oldest device that I had to test this thing on was an iPhone 13 mini. Hopefully that's the smallest screen size that you guys have to contend with. But when I did, that was about 265 pixels. And conversely, when I tested that on my iPhone 16, it was about 388. So if I could leave you with one piece of advice based on this, it would be definitely explore device targeting so that consumers with different size screens see different size content. But generally speaking, you wouldn't want to do anything less than like 200 pixels, but nothing more than like 375-ish. And if you kind of keep it in that range, you should be pretty safe. But Julio, aside from just changing the height of our images, like what else should we do here?
Where does Movable Ink come in, you're saying? So starting at the very top of the email, it's very common to see these little banners that call out key actions. And at Movable Ink, we call them key message banners. And from what I've seen, especially over the last few months, these banners deliver immense value to the brands that are leveraging them correctly. And again, they become a lot more important. So this is an example from Bath & Body Works. They created this dynamic status bar that is placed at the very, very top of the email. Now, this is going to bring an element of personalization to the very first thing that the subscriber sees. And notice how the banner changes, not just in copy and messaging, but also in the creative treatment that is used based on the most appropriate real-time action that the brand wants to drive or get the consumer to take. Now, the logic included targeting for loyalty sign-up, cart abandon reminders, and also any of many different individualized offers, such as a welcome offer, a birthday offer, or loyalty points that could be burned. So in very, very little real estate, they were able to deliver this key message that improved the overall email's performance. But as Andrew said, the actual hero is the biggest focus. It must be as impactful as it can be, but what it cannot be is simply delivering promo messaging, because that's just going to result in a race to the bottom. Bloomingdale's is one of our brands who realized this years ago and has actually moved away from manually selecting the hero content, and instead they leverage AI decisioning. The AI, which by now I think you know is called Da Vinci, chooses the right image for each and every individual from a library of personalized marketer-approved assets. So by leaning into the AI, Bloomingdale's is able to scale personalization. So now hundreds and hundreds of different versions of this email can go out on any given day, which is a fundamental shift from how most brands operate, where they have, at best, a few segmented sends.
And for me, what I love about those examples is that they're tactical, right? Like, these are all things that we can bring back to our brands and start implementing today. And hopefully what you guys get from that is kind of the red thread through all of them, is that the hero does continue to take on even more importance in this environment. I mean, it is called the hero after all. But that doesn't mean that we just get to ignore the rest of the content in the message, right? In fact, it's the opposite of that, because now, more than ever, we have to give our consumers a reason to click that see more link, a reason to scroll through the rest. So, Julio, any ideas on that front?
Ideas. All right. So we're going to start off really easy. Product recommendations, a tried and true piece of content in any email. If you have algorithmic recos through your data science team or through your product recs partner, then we can simply connect to their APIs or your homegrown APIs and pull those in real time into your emails. What I like about this example from At Home is that they are layering in real-time behaviors into their product grids from these different data sources. So if a subscriber has recently abandoned an item, that is shown in the first spot of the product grid. If they had only browsed a specific category, they'll pull in the items in that category that they were browsing. And if there's a consumer that has no behavioral data on file, then we pull in the top trending items. And if none of this logic is met, then we pull in the actual algorithmic product recommendations. So this waterfall logic ensures that something with relevancy is shown to each and every single subscriber. And you can make these product grids a lot more informative. Toolstation did two really, really great things. First, I know it's a little small, but they added social proof to the grids to create a sense of urgency by showcasing how quickly the products were moving. Second, they added convenience by showing how much inventory remained at the consumer's local store. Again, this updated in real time. And naturally, because they were speaking to the local store, they added a store locator so that the subscriber could know where they could quickly go and pick up this item that was actually in stock at their local store. This is a lot of valuable information that can train a customer to click see more, because it's giving them information and also it updates in real time.
And so again, some fantastic use cases that hopefully inspire some new ideas for everybody in the room. But with that, let's flash forward to where we are now with iOS 26. So honestly, much less of an impact here than we saw with iOS 18.2, but there is some things that we want to make sure that you are all aware of. So the first of which is called Advanced Tracking and Fingerprinting Protection, or ATFP for short. And the second is what they're calling Link Tracking Protection, which is LTP for short. And the TLDR, to use another acronym, is that Apple is actually going in and removing some user identifiable tracking params from our click-through links. And so again, like we said, the impact on email programs is relatively less than what we've seen in other channels, things like web, things like paid media. But did want to call out, if you're using things like gclid or dclid in your click-through links, that those will now be removed. Now, the other change that this brings about for us is as it pertains to text messaging, and more specifically, rerouting of messages either from an unsaved contact or a contact not previously marked as known to one of two locations. So if that happens, the first place your message could end up is the unknown senders folder. And what's key to know about that is from a delivery, a tracking point of view, that's still going to show as delivered. but the consumer isn't going to receive a notification that they got that message. Instead, their experience is going to be what you see in the image here, is that when they click into the little hamburger helper icon inside the Messages app, they'll just see a badge showing them how many unread are sitting in that folder. Now, the other new thing here is the spam folder. Probably a little less likely to impact everybody in this room because really its intent is to filter out malicious messages or phishing attempts, so hopefully nobody is sending those out. But just like if you end up in the unknown senders folder, from a deliverability point of view, this is still going to show as delivered. However, the consumer, again, is going to receive no notification. And unlike the unknown senders, they're also not going to see any badging there. So they're not going to know that they have messages in that spam folder unless they actually click into it and open it up. So based on all this, Julio, how do we want to respond here?
All right. So first and foremost, for brands that are sending from short codes, like what happens in the United States, and it's going to be for a lot of you who have counterparts in the US, they're leaning into contact card strategies. So they're getting the consumer to save the sender as a contact, as though they were a friend. I got this message from Public Lands, which is an American brand, just last week. And we can see clearly here that they are directly speaking to the reasoning behind asking to be saved as a contact, right? They're calling out iOS as the reason why. For brands that are using alphanumeric codes, like we see in the UK and throughout Europe, they're taking a similar approach. But unlike with a short code, you may not be able to save the alphanumeric as a contact. However, getting the customer to mark as known serves the same function. So a good example for that is what you see here from CB2, where they're asking the customer to save them as a known sender. So leaning into why they should mark as known is going to be very, very important moving forward. Another approach is simply to lean into the mobile ecosystem and drive customers to those experiences. So going back to Bath & Body Works, one of my favorite brands, they wanted to drive app adoption and app engagement. So in their emails, they also included these banners that changed to show one of two experiences. If the person did not have the app installed, then the CTA linked them directly to the correct app store. If they did have the app, then they were asked to turn on rich push notifications, since that is such a great channel for driving engagement, as we see some of the challenges with email that continue to pile on. A great way to drive that cross-channel adoption as well. Similarly, as you heard this morning in Brian's keynote, brands can lean into WhatsApp, which is a new channel for movable ink. So just like you can create those personalized one-to-one experiences in email through Studio, you can now deliver these one-to-one personalized experiences via WhatsApp. Now, we're not going to get into the details, but your account managers can provide more detail on how that integration works.
Yes, and I would just add, if you are interested in WhatsApp or mobile in general, please do come see us. We are more than happy to chat through any and all of that. But with that, let's pivot to the Gmail side of the house and talk a little bit more about managed subscriptions and most relevant sorting. So starting with the first, that managed subscription feature. So this came out back in July, but really what it attempts to do is what you see in the GIF, right? Its intent is to provide a consumer with that centralized dashboard that displays all the active email programs that that person is subscribed to. And that list gets sorted by that brand that is sending them the most, along with actually seeing the number of emails that they've received from that brand in, quote, the past few weeks. And then from there, what that consumer can do is click into any of these and actually see all of the messages from that sender in one spot, or they can actually unsubscribe in one click, with Gmail sending that request back to the brand on this user's behalf. So given these changes, what should we do in response?
All right, so this update means that subscribers are now going to easily see how often you are sending. And so you need to ensure that you are within each subscriber's individual acceptable parameters. So to do that, we're going to need to lean into AI to select the best total frequency for each and every single individual in order to maximize the chances that they're going to engage while simultaneously reducing the risk of unsubs. Through AI, one of our clients was able to reduce their send volume by 20% and also reduce unsubs by 6% while still driving incremental revenue. The AI achieves this by analyzing each individual consumer's behaviors and then evaluating the monetary value of engagement versus the cost of a churn. and using that data to decide whether or not to even send the message in the first place. Now, this is all happening at the individual subscriber level. So it's not just total channel frequency caps like we've done in the past. Another thing is that consumers will be able to see all of your emails in one place, which means they will also be able to see all of your subject lines in one place. Now, because your subject lines are all going to be visible in context with each other, you need to ensure that they are relevant and that we have enough of them in terms of diversity in order to not be redundant. Another one of our clients used our AI to generate and to choose the best subject line for each individual. And so they achieved relevancy and volume. And this resulted in lifts across all the key KPIs from clicks to revenue. And it's very, very simple. Essentially, you provide the model with your brand inputs. That's going to be your brand guidelines and your tones so that it can generate options for you in your voice. And then the marketer still maintains full control to edit or refine the results. Once the AI has all of the approved options, it can then rank all the different subject lines and predict which is going to resonate best with each subscriber in order to drive results.
Now, switching gears to some newer news, Google just announced this last month, and they're still in the process of rolling this out on mobile, but a couple key changes coming to the promo tab. The first of which is that now, instead of sorting the emails in that folder by most recent, those are going to be sorted by most relevant. They didn't exactly publish how they're doing that, but we have a little bit insight into the algorithm that we've seen in our testing. So if you want to chat about that after, please do come find me. But the second key edit here is what you guys see up at the top with Gmail introducing the new top deals for you section. That is going to live above the current top picks section based on our early testing there. And the idea here is that Google is going to be giving emails in this folder what they're calling nudges, which is essentially serving as a reminder when the content or the deal within that promo message is set to expire. And the idea here is that by putting this right at the top, a consumer is not going to miss out on something that could potentially add a lot of value to them. And so in response to it, there's really two things that, as marketers, we need to do. So the first, we have to make sure that the content is relevant, because now how a consumer engages or doesn't engage with our message directly impacts where we fit in that priority sort. And the second thing we have to do is make that timely, right? Increase the likelihood of us getting one of those nudges. And so let's take a look at some examples.
All right, so as far as relevance, this is a great example from Club Monaco. They created these templates that could showcase different themes, such as new arrivals or specific categories like pants. On the right in yellow, you can see that it was all placeholders that they gave Movable Ink, and then they provided the logic for the copy and the imagery that should populate within each placeholder. Movable Ink then grabbed the necessary information from different data sources, like the website, to pull in that correct information, whether that be images or copy. This had a total of 18 different versions between the US and Canada, and as you can see, each one at the end is executed on a high-end, on-brand editorial format that is all achieved while still being automated. And also, this email updates in real time, so different products shown are whatever is actually live on the website in that moment. Then, as far as being timely, Diptyque showed a dynamic shipping countdown banner to inform customers how much time they had in order to order their products in order to receive them for the holiday season, to receive their gifts on time. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen what we can do when it comes to time targeting, given our real-time capabilities. This is just one example that scratches the surface of what is possible in order to ensure that your timeliness messaging is accurate, possibly prompting that nudge.
And for me, what I hope you're gathering from all of these examples is that marketers who focus on quality versus quantity and really adopt that consumer, that customer-first approach instead of that product or that company-first approach, well, those are the ones that are going to continue to win regardless of the environment we're operating within. It's all about giving our subscribers that best possible experience, which really does come back to right content, to the right customer at the right time, and then making sure we're doing that in the right channel and at the right frequency. But we can't do any of that without the necessary data, right? Like, that's what's at the core of any and all of these strategies. And that's probably an entire keynote unto itself. But I couldn't let today's session end with Julio having all the fun and doing all the use cases. So I'm going to bring us home with another one of our favorites here. So This comes for Asda, where we're powering a year in review email from them that's transforming multiple real-time data elements into that appealing, into that engaging experience. This includes things like the total savings, coupon use, somebody's favorite categories. And in essence, what this really is a love letter to the consumer, right? Highlighting the depth of our relationship. But what I like most about this is that it didn't end in email, right? It was leveraged across multiple channels, with Asda being able to transform all of those key data points into mobile as well, and doing so through a rich push notification. And so for me, a really great example here of that customer-first experience that is right content, right customer, right time, and then on the right channel and at the right frequency.
Awesome. A really fantastic example to end on. So that brings us to time. Again, if you found any of the ideas shared today particularly interesting or thought-provoking, let's connect. We know that the year ahead will be filled with net new challenges and underscore existing ones, so let's figure them out together. With that, we want to say thank you for listening to this presentation and enjoy the rest of Think Summit.